What's up, everybody, and welcome in. This is FST. It's Fantasy Sports Today. My name's Matt Striker. Happy to be along for the ride. Want to remind you, at SportsGrid, at SportsGrid TV, those are our social media handles. And now it is my absolute honor and thrill to bring in the man not only behind the Fantasy Black Book, but evidently also behind the Bears' comeback yesterday, the one and only Mr. Joe Pisapia. Come on in, and let's start right there. How are you, and what'd you think of that?
I thought it was great. I thought it was very entertaining. I was on the Bears, so of course I liked it even more. I was going to get my cheese grater out this morning and start grating cheese everywhere, but I thought that would probably be not the best idea for the office. But I would say this: Caleb Williams giveth, Caleb Williams taketh away, and then he giveth again sometimes. So the guy with the lowest completion percentage of qualifying quarterbacks last night had some moments in that game where he brought that team back. The defense played terrific in the second half of that game. Look, this was a tale of two halves, right? You had a team that was absolutely out of it in the first half of this game. The Packers were dominating. And then the Chicago Bears scored 25 points in the fourth quarter. Let me put that on there again. 25 points in the fourth quarter. That is an incredible effort, incredible job staff, and job to be down that much and have the Bears respond to the coaching, respond, not throw in the towel, not give up. I said on a lot of my shows all week was that the best thing that happened to the Bears was that they lost last Sunday, because I thought it checked them a little bit. I thought, they weren't going to believe their hype. Right. And I thought Ben Johnson would be able to drive that. There's like, hey, the Packers can come in here and beat you. And then I saw the Packers up there in that game where they were. And I was like, man, I guess I was wrong about that. I guess the Bears, really just didn't have that in them. And then the second half happened, and then the fourth quarter unfolded. Incredible performances, too, despite some dropped footballs, too. Like I said, Caleb Williams, Colston Loveland, DJ Moore, all fantastic in this game. The defense really stepped up. Jordan Love played great, too. That kind of gets lost in the shuffle, I think, of this loss, is that Jordan Love, I think, did everything he could. Jordan Love, 4 touchdowns in this game, 323. Certainly some moments in this game, too, where you thought that Jordan Love was still pretty confident that he can get down there. And I think the big takeaway, too, is it's not the missed field goal. It's that missed extra point from McManus that I think really stung. Because when you miss that extra point, at the end of this game, when you have less than a minute left there driving down the field, you're not just trying to get in field goal range. You got to get a touchdown, right, Matt? So to me, that was the biggest difference maker. It wasn't the missed field goal. It wasn't any other moment. It was the missed extra point that could have sent this game to overtime, and then it could have been anyone's game.
Yeah, and your wisdom from watching knows enough to wait and then be able to point to that. And that is something that, look, we're going to have to see what this does to buoy the Bears' spirit going into their next challenge. Was this for real? Was this emotional? Let's see what they can build upon with this. Also, before we were coming on the air, we were also talking about how exciting that Rams-Panthers game was. And Joe, you had a really good take on why the final score looked the way it did. Care to share?
Yeah, I was doing this first half of this game live on Betting Pros yesterday, and Scott Bogman and I were watching it together and doing bets and having a good time. And, to me, the classic sandwich in that first half of you have that another one of these fourth downs where the Carolina Panthers go for it in the first drive, and we're watching it going, are you crazy? Why are you going to eventually? You're ruining the mojo. Cam Newton just bangs the drum. The crowd is excited. Okay, the first drive stalls out. Are you going to give up field position on that first drive? And they did. And what happened? The Rams go and score a touchdown. Then a gift after a situation there where their drive stalls out. The Rams punt. Etienne has it go off of his face mask. They've got free points there, and then they go for it on fourth. If they had just kicked the field goal there at the end of that first half, they would have gone up 20-7 in that game at that point. And that would have been a point where all of a sudden I think the crowd just goes, oof. And I think they're out of it. I think the life comes out of that building a little bit. Instead, they get a big fourth down stop. What happens? They go down and score a touchdown. And all of a sudden, here we are, right? And the second half of this game unfolds, and it becomes 34-31 at the end. Matthew Stafford pulls it out, 300 yards for him, 3 touchdowns. But the pressure, again, 14 pressures on Bryce Young yesterday. Incredible amount in the first half of that game. It was unbelievable. You had Jalen Coker have a huge game, one of my favorite guys to buy in Dynasty this year. Well, I think his price just went up. 9 catches for 134 and a touchdown. Puka Nacua obviously doing Puka Nacua things. Great to see Devontae Adams back and contributing too. There's some questions the first half because he was super quiet in the first, almost entire half of that game. But the Rams showed up and eventually figured out what to do. But this was a symptomatic of what's going on in the NFL. We've talked about it all the time. Dan Campbell does it. A lot of organizations do this. This fourth down stuff where you're going for it in these positions, giving up field position, and the next thing you know, you're giving up points, and the next thing you know, your crowd is out of it or their crowd is now back in it. That swing, that it's not all analytics, and it drives me nuts, as any sort of football coach should be driven nuts about it, that you can't understand that we're in a position where you have to understand in the playoffs, it's a different game. Even the regular season, it drives me crazy, but in the playoffs, the Rams should have walked away with this game. It should have been a cakewalk in that first half. They should have put the Panthers away. They did not. They left the door open. They didn't even learn from the mistake the Panthers showed them in the first half of that game, and that's why you got the game you did. Now, look, it's been a great weekend of football to start off. What a super weekend it's been, Matt.
Absolutely. He is an analyst, he is a coach, and he is our guy, Joe Pisapia. Listen, Joe, I know there are almost, 8 coaching vacancies in the NFL currently. If any GM or anyone affiliated with any of those teams, I know you watch, Joe Pisapia would make a great front office guy. We'd hate to lose him, but I promise you he will make your team better. And with that, let's segue to the coaching vacancies. Joe, listen, you're going into the Garden State Flag Football Hall of Fame as a coach. Everyone knows it. The things you see and analyze are just so astute. Talk to me about some of these coaching vacancies. We have them ranked here. Talk to me about these rankings.
Well, if I'm going to go to the front office, I got to get more dress shirts and more vests. Those are two things that I got to get. That's the entire of the NFL GM. So I think when I go to the combine this year, I'm just going to walk around in that outfit and see how many people think that I'm in the front office. I'm just going to say what happens there. All right, let's get to the coaching vacancies here. So John Harbaugh out in Baltimore. My favorite meme of the week was the meme of the field goal posts where in the middle, if they had made the field goal, it says Mike Tomlin's fired. And on either side, it says John Harbaugh fired. Funniest meme I saw. Absolutely accurate. Absolutely true. Harbaugh out. Then you also have Mike McDaniel out. We saw that happen a little later in the week there after we thought he was safe. The Giants' job, I still contend to be one of the best, if not the best, too. Ownership is very good, but I have to put the Baltimore job as the best job available because you have Lamar Jackson, because you have so much talent on that roster. But the Giants' job, I think, is a close second because you have a young quarterback there. You have Malik Neighbors. You have Scadaboo. You have defensive talent. You have great ownership. You have a New York marketplace. Kevin Stefanski out in Cleveland. I think Stefanski is the right job the right guy for the job for the New York Giants. Personally, I would like to see that happen. Cleveland, I think, is the third spot there because Cleveland, you can pick your own quarterback and you still have some talent. They had a great draft this past year, right? Harold Fannin, Judkins. They've got a lot of guys on defense still that are still very good in their prime. A guy who just broke the sack record, too. He's pretty good at football, Myles Garrett. Number 4 is the Atlanta job. Number 5, the Las Vegas Raiders. So although they have some talent, still a lot of infrastructure issues in that organization for me. Miami just is a mess. From a front office standpoint, they're going to have to redo this whole thing here. We'll see how that rebuild goes. The Arizona Cardinals is the 7th best job, I think, and still the 8th is the Tennessee Titans. I think they're farthest away when it comes to the actual talent that they have on the roster, the infrastructure of the organization. But they have 8 vacancies. Will we have more? If the Buffalo Bills should not make it out of the first round of these playoffs this year, could we see a change in head coach for Buffalo? I think it's possible depending on how that game goes. You look, that game was a Buffalo Bills favorite. Now they're the underdogs. Jacksonville never should have been the underdog in that game, but still, the Buffalo Bills in a year where the Chiefs aren't there and the Ravens aren't there, a lot of questions there for Buffalo. We got a whole lot more FST. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this.
Who are we looking at? We're looking at SGA because of his availability and consistency. It's Jalen Brown to do his usage and his leadership. It's Jalen Brown for how they're playing. It's Cade Cunningham because Detroit's in the top of the East. The MVP talk is going to be wild, and it'll be interesting to watch. MVPs just don't dominate. They survive the season.
Pro basketball today, only on SportsGrid.
The Steelers get their touchdown, and they miss the extra point. It was Lamar Jackson who made the plays to get the Ravens into what should have been easy field goal territory. So explain to me how in the world we can look at last night's game as, well, there you go, can't trust Lamar Jackson.
The Craig Carton Show, only on SportsGrid.
Maybe the fact was that the kicker just blew a 44-yard field goal. Now, by the way, I feel horrible for this kid, Tyler Loop, who made every single field goal this season 44 yards or less. But the extra point that was missed just before that by Chris Boswell was the only extra point that he missed all season long. So did they bless that same holy water when Boswell missed the extra point? Come on, guys. Let's get it.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
Hey, right. Well, welcome back into FST, Fantasy Sports Today. Matt, Joe, Samwai, the sports guy behind the glass, having a great time. And it's time for the segment that all season long has made us profit. It's time for the Fantasy Over-Under. And if you're new or perhaps unfamiliar, I'm talking to Joe Pisapia, the author of the Fantasy Black Book, both for football and baseball. Baseball is available right now. We're going to be having some baseball talk in just a little bit, but still sticking with how to make some money here today. I'll tell Joe a scenario. He'll tell me if he thinks it happens, plain and simple. All right, Joe, here we go. Travis Etienne, 64.5 rushing yards. Does he go over or under, and why?
I'm going to say he goes over this mark. I think you are going to be at home. You're going to run the football, right? Trevor Lawrence has played really well down the stretch here. Is it a lock here? And you look at the numbers? No, some of the usage down the stretch has been a little up and down, but some of that is also based on some of these games where, you know, they were just in control of it, like the Jets game, for instance, right? Like that was one where they were very much in control. Against Indianapolis in week 17, he went over this. Obviously, week 18, different story. Everybody got pulled there in that game. But before that, he was over this number in week 9, week 11, week 12, and week 14. So we know that it's in there. And to me, if you're game planning against Josh Allen, what do? You keep Josh Allen off the field as much as you can, because you know Josh Allen, when he's on the field, can make incredible plays, can make plays with his arm, make plays with his legs, and that's what's going to beat you in this game. He doesn't have a lot of help, but you have to maintain possession. You have to make sure that you're in control of the clock. You're playing the clock as much as you are playing the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen in this game. So Travis Etienne has to work in this one. You got to get him 15 to 20 carries. You got to make sure that you're pressing the football here. And Etienne, I think, is up for this, especially with a lighter workload in the last couple of weeks. So I like the Jags in this game. I liked them in Monday when they were underdogs. And I like them now that they're slight favorites in this game as the number has moved over the weekend. So give me Travis Etienne for the over on this rushing total. Matt, who do you like in this Buffalo game too? Have you landed on the team?
It's a good question, actually. Yes, I still believe that a second season ignites something in teams that have, quote unquote, been there before. So I do believe the Bills. I do believe the Bills in the AFC, at least past this week. But I like what you're saying there, that the most logical game script that will lead to victory for Jacksonville must feature Etienne doing exactly what we're talking about. So thank you for that. Now, on to the next game that I've been looking on social media, and I see most sports gridders are divided on this one the most, and it's the Eagles and the Niners. So we're going to talk Christian McCaffrey. 45.5 is the number, but for receiving yards. Let's be clear here. Receiving yards, over or under, and why, Joe?
Yeah, I think the path for the 49ers in this game, and I think we've seen it with a lot of teams, when you have Jalen Carter up front, it's not a good time here to run the football, right? It's just not. And McCaffrey, between the tackles, has not been nearly as successful this year as he's been in some previous years. He's going to be 30 next year. He's also had over 400 touches already. So let me say that again for everybody out loud. Last time he had 417 touches, right? We went back, and the next year he barely played. This year they run him into the ground again, and he's going to be 30 years old next year. So will Christian McCaffrey be in my top 10 picks going into 2026? Well, we'll have to wait for a couple of weeks for that, but I can tell you it's fringy at best. Well, look, right now, the best way for the 49ers to approach this game is to get Christian McCaffrey the football, but you got to do it in space, right? You got to stay away from that middle, away from that front of the Philadelphia Eagles. So let's go for the passing side of this game instead, and let's go for the receiving yard total here for Christian McCaffrey, 45.5. Now, he hasn't hit this in a while. He hasn't hit it since week 12, but I do believe that Christian McCaffrey's in a spot to do that today. So again, this is about game planning. This is about approach, trying to take that football knowledge that we have here, trying to apply it to the props. And I still think that the Eagles win this football game. I think they are remembering when the 49ers came into their building a couple years ago and beat them pretty soundly. And I think that the Eagles are in a spot where they have one of the few home field advantages that still exists. It's a tough place to play. I think the 49ers got exposed. And I know Williams is going to play in this game, so that's a huge deal for the 49ers. How healthy is he? That's the big question. So, Matt, I don't know where you're landing on this one, but I am on the Eagles side here. Yeah, the Eagles are ugly. Yeah, they're out of sync. They've been that all year, but they're still the defending champs, and they're at home, so I'm going to stick with the Eagles there. I think the 49ers got exposed by the Seahawks. And, yeah, everyone talks about easy schedules for teams like the Patriots. How about the easy schedule for the 49ers? And then when they play good teams, they lose. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yep. So this was the one game from which I stayed away, and I think it was like a smart bet. And even the dog beneath the table agrees as the deck gets shuffled, because here's the thing. If I put too much on a game that I'm not entirely sure about, I'm going to be chasing. That's why that Monday night game is there. And that's why I think it's the particular game that it is, because the first game that everyone was able to wager upon, if you played the spread, you lost. Now you're chasing it. And that's what I need to be careful of. All right, with the time that we have left, let's get to the other games here. Travion Henderson has just been a darling for the Pats. 54.5 rushing yards is a number. Does he go over or under, and why?
Yeah, this is all about, can he break that big one? And I think the answer is yes. He's gone over this number in every single game since week 8 for the rushing total, just putting that out there, except for against the Baltimore Ravens in week 16. So, and remember, he came out of that game. That was the game he got concussed in. So let's keep that in mind. So basically, it's about that one big play for Travion. Can he get that one big run? And I think when you're watching Travion in the second half, the answer is undoubtedly yes. He has gotten it almost every single week. There's that one spot where you hand him the football, and it looks like it's going to be nothing. And the next thing you know, he's gone for 30 yards. That's how he gets this over. That's how he gets this. I'm of the mind that the New England Patriots win this game. They're in control of this game. I don't think there's ever a point in this game where you're concerned the Patriots are going to lose, but I do think the Chargers will hang around. I don't think it's going to be one of these blowout type scenarios. So it is going to be like, oh, New England's in control of this game. Pats are going to win. There's going to be some moments there where it gets tense, but I think the defense of the Patriots will show up. And the last one here might surprise you. It's an over for Aaron Rodgers. Now, the Houston Texans defense, obviously one of the best in the league, if not the best. But I think the game script here says that they're going to have to throw the football. And you do have DK Metcalf returning now because it's the playoffs. And I think that just the sheer need, because I do believe that Nico Collins will show up in this game. We'll talk more about him later. I think Aaron Rodgers will be pressed to throw the football. And this is a very low number. 204.5 is very low. And I think Aaron Rodgers will get over this number. Not by a lot, not like a 300-yard game for him. But I do think the over is where I'm living. We'll be back with more FST right after this.
Let's play a little buy or sell. I think it's pretty evident that despite being one of the best tight ends in the history of the NFL, Travis Kelce's play and physicality and everything, with all due respect, took a big step back. This was easily his worst physical season of all. He just didn't look like himself. Travis Kelce will retire after the season. Buy or sell?
Yeah, I'm probably 60-40 on this that he retires. The only thing I'd say that maybe he returns is because he doesn't want to end the way it ended, not making the playoffs and that sort of thing. But let's just say for Gales that Mahomes, he isn't going to be ready for September or October. Unless they get a really good veteran quarterback, maybe he doesn't want to deal with that either. Go through a training camp, and you may not make the playoffs either next year. So I'm probably 60-40. I think he's done. Too bad. Hall of Fame career. I guess good luck with Travis Swift and your podcast with Jason.
I'm buying this. Andy Reid addressing this question this week. Why? He could have just deferred and said, I don't know, we'll see. Fully answered the question about this maybe being his last game. What does that tell you? He knows. Everybody knows. I'm not 60-40, 90-10. I'm on buy. Bo Nix versus Caleb Williams. You'd rather have Nix over Caleb Williams in a dynasty league?
That's a tough one. I think I'm going to go Caleb here, mainly because he has more running ability than Nix. I think he'll also stay healthier than Nix. I might like his receivers more as well. He's got Dunze. He's got you got DJ Moore. You got the good tight ends here. Probably do lean towards Williams here. Not by a hell of a lot. It wouldn't be an easiest choice here, but I'm going to go with Caleb Williams here.
I would agree. It's not that I think that Ben Johnson is a better coach than Sean Payton. I think Ben Johnson is better for Caleb Williams than Sean Payton will be for Bo Nix. I think running is going to be a big part of what Denver does in the future. So there you go. I'll sell.
Fantasy Sports Today. Friday starting at 3 p.m. Only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports Today. Matt Striker and Joe Pisapia with you here, giving you everything you need in order to dominate. And Joe, the Fantasy Black Book for Baseball is out, and it's never too early to start. I'm deep already, watching a hot stove and all that off-season stuff. Let's talk a little bit about the Chicago Cubs. They bolster their pitching staff via trade, and then they bolster their offense via free agent signing. Edward Cabrera on the trade side, Alex Bregman on the signing side. Talk to me about what this means for the Cubs overall.
Well, first, I was shocked that they got Owen Casey in this deal. Owen Casey was the best prospect in the Cubs system. Last year did miss some time with injury, but he had a 286, 386, 551 slash with a 937 OPS. I mean, Owen Casey looks like a young stud player. He had 22 home runs in those 99 games, by the way. It's got a little bit of speed, too. He stole 5 bases, but really, this is a guy that looks like he's going to be a really good major league player. I know he fizzled out in a little cup of coffee with the Cubs, but I mean, again, every young player seems to do that. So Owen Casey going in this deal is a great job by the Marlins front office to bring him in. So I think he might have a shot to open, the season there. And you already got Stowers out there. You've got a returning Conine. You got Marcy. You got a lot of bodies there now for the Marlins. So a great job by them. And look, good job by the Cubs. Edward Cabrera, a pitcher that I know, Lance Bronstowski, who we've had on our show, is one of the best pitching gurus out there. He did a terrific job last year of analyzing why Cabrera could find a breakout in 2025. And he was right. There were some moments there where it got a little tricky, but that's Edward Cabrera. He made 26 starts last year. That was an all-time high for him. 137 innings, also an all-time high. He is going to be 28 years old, 150 strikeouts. Last year, just 48 walks. So that was the big difference too, that 3-to-1 strikeout to walk ratio. That really changed the game there. He always had a good strikeout total. The K per 9 was always around 10. It was again last year, but it was the walks that would really undo him. He went from a guy who was 4.7 walks per 9 to a guy who was 3.1 walks per 9. That drop, that difference is so significant because you see the whip come down, the ERA come down. When you're not beating yourself by putting guys on, that is how you start to make headway as a pitcher. He's got great velocity. It was a matter of can he put it all together, and he did last year. And the Marlins did a great job of capitalizing on that. He's had health issues, he's had control issues, and you just got the best prospect from the Cubs. So it's a win for the Cubs because he's going to slot in probably as their number 3 guy behind Steele and Imanaga right now. But still, like to get a prospect like Casey, great job by the Marlins. So watch for Owen Casey probably in at least the latter part of this season. to make an impact for the Marlins.
All right, and let's stay on the Cubs here. They add Alex Bregman now, and we were talking internally, Sam Wiley, the sports guy behind the glass, our producer, and you. What does the addition of Bregman mean to the Cubs offense? What does it mean for guys like Matt Shaw or Nico Horner?
It probably means one of them is going in a trade. My guess is actually it's Matt Shaw because he can bring you back more. But also, when you go and look at last season for Alex Bregman with the Boston Red Sox, he only played 114 games. He did hit 18 home runs over that span. He drove in 62. He had 273, which is higher than he's hit since 2021. He had an 821 OPS, which is also his highest mark since he have got to go all the way back to 2019. So it was a really good season for Bregman, despite the fact that it was a little shortened. What Bregman brings is that winning mentality. He's been on a lot of winning teams. He went to Boston. Guess what? They were in the playoffs. And I think the Cubs need a little of that edge. I think it's a good deal for the Cubs. It makes sense. It also tells you Kyle Tucker's on the move. And Matt, that brings us to some of the guys that are still out there. We had this list all ready to go this morning, and Alex Bregman signed late last night. So obviously Kyle Tucker's still at the top of that list. Cody Bellinger still on that list. We can cross Alex Bregman off. Framber Valdez, Ranger Suarez. I know you think Kyle Tucker is going to land in Toronto. Why?
He's been connected. He visited their facility in Dunedin, and Toronto is also one of these teams internally that guys talk about. They have all these new advanced metrics, and they seem to be the team rolling out the carpet for Tucker. You look at Cody Bellinger, the Yankees seem to be at an impasse, and it looks like Bellinger might get a shorter deal, go to the Dodgers maybe, and that would make people roll their eyes. Framber Valdez on this list. Joe, he's been linked to the Mets, but he may go to the Orioles. I'll turn it over back to you.
I think Framber is the guy for the Mets. You need somebody with innings, and no one's thrown more than him basically in the last 5 years. So Framber Valdez, to me, is the perfect fit. He also gives you a little bit of edge, and some people don't like that, but I do. Yeah, that team needs a little bit of an edge, okay? Last year, they were a little soft around the middle at the end of the season, and Framber Valdez ain't going to let that happen. We know that. That guy's ready to compete. Ranger Suarez, a really good arm, too. He could help a lot of teams. So still a lot of hot stove baseball. We'll keep you updated every week as more free agency unfolds. But back to football when we come back on SportsGrid.
Maybe the fact was that the kicker just blew a 44-yard field goal. Now, by the way, I feel horrible for this kid, Tyler Loop, who made every single field goal this season 44 yards or less. But the extra point that was missed just before that by Chris Boswell was the only extra point that he missed all season long. So did they bless that same holy water when Boswell missed the extra point? Come on, guys. Let's get it.
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
They have one more win than Chicago, and they literally beat Chicago in Week 17, and yet the Niners are on the road and the Bears are at home. Why? Because of an outdated rule that says, well, winning your division is the holy grail. Rewarding an 8-win division winner with a home playoff game is like giving the corner office to the guy who won the office fantasy pool instead of the guy who actually closed the accounts all year.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
It's going to open up Pandora's box. But I will say this. I do believe players that sign now, like Najee, should not be eligible now, but should have to sit out and come back in next year. It's just a slippery slope. And I agree with people like Tom Izzo. I don't like it at all.
College basketball today. Only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
All right, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports Today. Matt Striker and Joe Pisapia giving you everything you need in order to dominate. Joe Pisapia, of course, the author of the Fantasy Black Book for both football and baseball. And Joe, we're about to go into FST League winners. And the reason I bring up the Black Book is because this segment here is a product and a result of all the hard work that all the fantasy managers out there do. And we see you out there. We hear you. We love you. All that hard work finally pays off. Joe, let's talk about some of these players that if you had them on your roster, chances are you went to the postseason in your respective fantasy leagues. Let's go.
Yeah, we use that term league winner quite a lot, right? We throw this guy's a league winner, that guy's a league winner. But what we like to do is back it up. We like to back it up with the math. We like to quantify it here on FST, and we like to show you just the reasons why and also who those guys really were. And I know some of them are going to be obvious, but we're going to dig into not only the guys that were league winners that got you to playoffs, but also that got you to championships and ultimately winning the league. So let's start with three guys that were the most common roster players on teams that went to the playoffs. And start with Jackson Smith and Jigba. Look, JSN was a guy going in the second round of most drafts. Shout out to my boy Jake Seeley from The Athletic, who I work with every week. He said JSN was basically his top three wide receiver. And you know what? I at the time, I was like, really? Was Sam Darnold, you're that confident? He's like, yep. He's like, there's just nobody else there, and he's going to get all the work. And guess what? He was 100% right. 1,715 yards for him. Unbelievable season. He had 10 receiving touchdowns. He caught 129 balls there. 119 balls and 10 touchdowns. Incredible season there for JSN. Jonathan Taylor also. I know it faded down the stretch. I know injuries just destroyed the Indianapolis Colts. It was very upsetting for the Colts fans, very upsetting for a lot of fantasy managers. But still, Jonathan Taylor's workload was always there for you. He was number 2 at 72%. So you made the playoffs because Jonathan Taylor was so good for the first 10 games or so of the year. It was undeniable. He was chasing the rushing leader pack there for quite some time. Again, the fall off, not his fault. It was just a matter of you lost Daniel Jones and then you lost everything. He ended up with 1,500 plus rushing yards and 18 touchdowns, an incredible mark for him. And of course, Christian McCaffrey, a guy that, started off kind of at the turn, ended up being drafted somewhere around the 5th or 6th player by the time we got to the end of draft season. McCaffrey was exactly what you wanted him to be. He led all running backs with 21.5 points per game and half PPR. He had 102 receptions. He had 924 receiving yards. He was absolutely stunning. He had 1,200 rushing yards and another 10 touchdowns there for him. So 17 combined touchdowns for McCaffrey. But next year, what's that going to look like? Scary times. So let's just keep that in mind. But obviously, JSN, Taylor, McCaffrey, three guys that if you had them, there was a pretty good chance, 3/4 of a chance, right, that you were getting to the playoffs this year.
All right. So now we'll have to see what that means for next season. So if you had those players, you got to the playoffs. But let's talk about if you had these players, then you got to the championship. Joe, there is a repeat offender from the earlier list, and then there's 2 new names. Take it away.
Yeah, the repeat offender, Christian McCaffrey, obviously, had himself a pretty good playoff. 17% of rosters that won the championship had Christian McCaffrey. That doesn't seem like a lot, but trust me, it is. That's a very high percentage because we're talking as we're like trimming teams down here of what we got. There's only so many players that are still available when you get down to the last 2 teams in the league. Puka Nacua,
indeed.
A 17%, 200 yards receiving, a massive game for him. But can we talk about Bijan Robinson's finish? My goodness. Let's talk about what this guy did here. Week 15, 93 rushing yards and a touchdown with 8 catches and 82 yards. Then in week 16, 76 rushing yards. And then he had 7 catches for 92 and a touchdown. And then the last week in week 17, talk about crowning a championship. 195 rushing yards against the Rams, a touchdown, plus 5 catches for 34. And a receiving touchdown. Bijan Robinson was an incredible league winner. He's arguably going to be at the top of the heap next year. He could be the cover boy of the Black Book. We haven't decided quite yet on what it's going to be. Obviously, you see the baseball one behind me. It's Shohei Ohtani. But Bijan Robinson, 18% rostered league winner. That guy, talk about showing up when it mattered in the fantasy playoffs. What a 3-week run for Bijan. And look, there it is. Boom, right behind me. Fantasy Black Book. Shohei Ohtani, cover boy.
That works. Available now. As soon as we go to commercial, just do that little thing you do on your phone and how you order stuff and get it. All right, now, Joe, this is where we pay you the big bucks, okay? So it's now time to look at the best playoff ROI players. For those that are unfamiliar, it's return on investment. Joe, as I understand this, this is basically the player's performance against where you drafted this player or how you acquired said player. But I'm going to let you take it from here because this is your expertise.
Yeah, look, I think George Pickens is a player that some people were still unsure about. Where's Pickens going to, go in drafts? Are we going to get into a spot where, does he just get destroyed by CeeDee Lamb's productivity? Well, guess what? 60% of teams that won that had George Pickens on it. So we're talking about a player that was drafted much later. He was the 63rd player off the board, wide receiver 29. He didn't finish as wide receiver 29. I can tell you that much. When you're talking about return on investment and guys that return it, Matt, you want to take a guess here of what George Pickens finished at in terms of wide receiver level? Wide receiver,
I think
maybe?
George Pickens was easily a top 10 wide receiver this year, was he not?
You are correct. He finishes wide receiver 5. Yay. So when you drafted him as 29 and he became wide receiver 5, that's pretty good. Now, his teammate, Javonte Williams, was also a guy that nobody seemed to want to touch. Everybody was looking at Javonte Williams and saying, I'm not really crazy about him. And, they drafted Blue. And I think by the end of draft season, people just sort of said, I need a running back. I'll take Javonte Williams. Well, they're happy they did. 57% here in terms of rostered playoff teams had Javonte Williams. Why? Because that offense was terrific. The defense was terrible. And Javonte Williams had no competition. So Javonte Williams was crushing it. And one of my favorite guys, you remember this, because I talked about it and I ranted and raved about it going back to August, was James Cook. Nobody wanted James Cook. Nobody wanted to touch James Cook. I don't understand. As if Buffalo has all these other weapons that they were using. James Cook, all he did was lead the league in rushing with 1,621 yards. He had 12 rushing touchdowns, another 2 receiving. So much for that touchdown regression that happened. He was still pretty damn good, and he was rostered in 55% of teams that won and went into the playoffs. So those were guys that were great returns on investment that ended up taking to the playoffs and to the dance.
All right, now applying the same concept, this time to the championship. Let's talk about the best championship ROI players and understand how we've broken this down here, folks. It's the players that are going to get you to the playoffs, players that are going to get you to the championship. When you have the right blend, it really pays off. Joe, talk about the best championship ROI players, please.
Well, we talked about the return on investment of George Pickens at wide receiver 29. How about Chris Olave at wide receiver 34, who had himself a fantastic season? Tyler Shuck looks like he's going to be pretty good. I was, skeptical, but rooting for Tyler Shuck. And then, look, Chris Olave, I got to tell you, an incredible season for him. 100 receptions. He finishes wide receiver 6. That's the kind of guy that wins you a championship. That's the kind of guy that gets you to the playoffs. Drake May, another one of our favorite guys. It's funny because the rest of these guys here on this list were some of our darlings in draft season, right? Drake May, a guy who was a free quarterback. We said, draft Drake May, put him on your roster. If you're in Superflex leagues, be aggressive. Drake May with Josh McDaniels is going to be very good. He's going to finish as a top 10 quarterback. Well, he's QB2 on the season in fantasy. So that's pretty good. It's better than top 10. It's better than top 5. Right. He was QB on the season. And then Travis Etienne, another guy that nobody wanted, right? 12% of teams that won the championship had Travis Etienne on their roster. Travis Etienne, James Cook, my 2 most rostered running fantasy pros on my teams this year. And that is why we win. This is what we do on FST because we're trying to show you the value and where things are. Now, Etienne next year in free agency, we'll see where he lands, what that looks like, and what that value is going to be. But those were the guys that got you into the playoffs last year, that got you to the championship last year. And that is how you quantify going into next year, looking for that value as well. Who are the guys that are going to jump tiers? Who's going to be a free player that's going to win you a league? That's what we do. So make sure you're hanging out with us on SportsGrid or FST right after this.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
They have one more win than Chicago, and they literally beat Chicago in Week 17, and yet the Niners are on the road and the Bears are at home. Why? Because of an outdated rule that says, well, winning your division is the holy grail. Rewarding an 8-win division winner with a home playoff game is like giving the corner office to the guy who won the office fantasy pool instead of the guy who actually closed the accounts all year.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Maybe the fact was that the kicker just blew a 44-yard field goal. Now, by the way, I feel horrible for this kid, Tyler Loop, who made every single field goal this season 44 yards or less. But the extra point that was missed just before that by Chris Boswell was the only extra point that he missed all season long. So did they bless that same holy water when Boswell missed the extra point? Come on, guys. Let's get it.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
It's going to open up Pandora's box. But I will say this. I do believe players that sign now, like Najee, should not be eligible now, but should have to sit out and come back in next year. It's just a slippery slope. And I agree with people like Tom Izzo. I don't like it at all.
College basketball today, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports Today. My name's Matt Striker. His name's Joe Pisapia. Sam Y, the sports guy behind the glass. Just a quick tip of the cap to you, Sam. I know you're wearing many hats today, as you always do, and we appreciate you. And so do all these sports gridders out there, because without our producer and our production team, we don't come to you. So thanks so much. Joe, we're like a sandwich. We're like a sandwich between the people and the production, and then we're the lettuce and tomato in the middle. All right. I don't know how I'm getting out of this, but I'm going to try. It's time now to do FST Fantasy Stars. I noticed you're just deadpan straight looking at me, and I love you for it, bro.
Friends let friends flounder at intros. That's what happens.
Sure. Listen, the more antagonistic you are to a person, the more you like them. That's how I was raised. It's where I'm from. So Joe and I do this. Okay. Fantasy Stars for Wildcard Weekend, Joe. Let's talk here. Who are the people that we need to be focusing on? How can we better ourselves? How can they better themselves? Let's talk. Where do you want to go first?
Well, I want to talk about who I think are going to be the big impact players in certain games today. And I think when you're looking at Buffalo, it's very easy to say Josh Allen. It's very easy to say Trevor Lawrence. It might even be easy at this stage to say Jacoby Myers with the way he's played here down the stretch for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And maybe next week we talked about all those league winner guys, maybe the league loser guys, like the biggest busts and disappointments, because Brian Thomas Jr. has to be on that list. A guy drafted in the first round. Oh, you don't want to know where he finished at wide receiver number. You don't want to talk about that. We'll save that conversation maybe for next week. But Travis Etienne was on that league winner list there, that return on investment list. And I think he returns an investment. Going back to what I said earlier in the day about, you have a situation where if you're game planning against Buffalo Bills, you need to keep Josh Allen limited as much as you can with the football. Time of possession matters. You got to run the football. Liam Cohen's smart. Liam Cohen's going to figure that out. He's going to understand that. And Travis Etienne has had a great season with Liam Cohen in this offense. And I think that a lot of people thought, well, Bashal Tutin's going to take over. They didn't want him because Tank Bigsby was going to be a thing. Tank Bigsby got traded week 2. Okay? Bye-bye. He's on the Philadelphia Eagles. So this is Travis Etienne's backfield. And I know Tutin's a fun player. I like Bashal Tutin as well. Maybe next year he becomes the guy. We'll see. But for this particular week here, for this particular game plan, I think Travis Etienne is going to be heavily involved. So I like his touchdown equity if you're betting anytime touchdowns for Travis Etienne. And I think the secret to the Jags' success here is play defense, run the football, control possession, control the clock. And then you're giving Josh Allen less chances to beat you. And when you do that, I think that's a recipe for success. Matt, any take on Travis Etienne or this Buffalo Bills-Jags game that we have here kicking things off on Sunday?
Well, to echo what you said in the an earlier segment, that most logical game script for Jacksonville to be successful in this game, Travis Etienne must be a vital part of that. Even if they choose to get cute and give different looks, at the end of the day, you have to go what gets you to the dance. I also want to echo what I said in an earlier segment with regards to that. I believe teams like Buffalo, Philadelphia, these are the teams that wait for the second season. And once they get in, it's we've been here before and we know how to win. So my pick is Buffalo for this game. I know you and everyone else leaning Jacksonville. And the beauty of it is, God willing, we live and be well. We'll return next week and we'll be able to talk about it. Now, I mentioned Philadelphia. I want to know your thoughts on if there is one particular player outside of the obvious, I guess you can't say Saquon Barkley, that can make or break this game today. Who would it be?
For the record, by the way, another one of our big preseason discussions was Saquon Barkley after his 400-plus carries, not just touches, carries last year, that he was not going to finish as an RB1. Guess what? He didn't. RB14. So once again, data for the win, undefeated, the history. When you lay it out there, nobody wanted to hear it. He was not a first-round talent. He was not a first-round draft pick. Unfortunately, he did not return that investment. And you can argue A.J. Brown most of the year didn't do that either. And I know it's been a weird drama here, but I think at the end of the day, A.J. Brown has himself a day here. I think there's a complete mismatch here with you have the secondary of the San Francisco 49ers. They've had a lot of injuries there. I think the way you beat the 49ers is throwing the football, and I think they're going to have to do that today. And I think A.J. Brown's going to be a big part of that. So give me A.J. Brown for the W here. I like the Eagles in this one. I liked it was at 3.5 and moved to 4.5. I still like it there. I just think whenever you have those teams on the West Coast too, they have to travel and play early games. The body clock is off. There's a lot there where you're just not in sync. And I think that the 49ers got exposed against the Seahawks. Exactly who I thought the 49ers were, I saw against Seattle at the end of the year. And I thought, yep, that's exactly right. You throw a great defense at this team, it's going to be a very different story. And I don't want to take too much out of like, oh, well, they did beat the Rams this year. Well, the Panthers almost beat the Rams, and the Panthers beat the Rams in the regular season. So maybe the Rams need to get checked a little bit too. So I think the Eagles will find a way to win this game, and I think A.J. Brown has at least a touchdown in this one as well. So give me A.J. Brown to find the end zone and make an impact today. Where are you at here with Eagles 49ers?
You know, this is the one game from which I've stayed away from a wagering standpoint. But if I had to lean, and after hearing you, I'm leaning Philadelphia just because of where they're playing and just what Philadelphia can do in the second season in the playoffs. All right, let's give more of that game script. I love what you're doing here. Give me a couple of more. Talk to me about the New England Charger game, and then talk to me about the Monday night game. Give me a couple of players that you think are going to stand out and why.
Well, the Chargers defense is pretty good. I want to give them some credit there. They play hard. But I going back to TreVeyon Henderson being that explosive guy, I look for that big TreVeyon play in the playoffs. That really sparks this team. I think he's got touchdown equity in this game. So give me TreVeyon Henderson. Again, another team that's traveling 3,000 miles from the West Coast to chillier temperatures where you're going to have to play in New England, right? Is it sub-zero? No. If it was, maybe it would be a different story. But still, I just think the injuries to the offensive line for the Chargers are going to be too much for them to overcome. Herbert's doing a great job. He's had a great season. He really has been a warrior, and that term gets overused. Herbert's been a warrior, but I believe that TreVeyon Henderson's going to be the difference maker in that game. And last but not least here, I'm going to give you that Houston Texans team, and I'm going to give you Nico Collins. I think Nico has himself a big day. The Pittsburgh Steelers defense is mediocre, okay? They just are. If you go and look at all the metrics and everything that's going on there, yeah, they got TJ Watt. He's a great player. Yes, of course, they're at home. But the Texans defense is ferocious. They're going to get after Aaron Rodgers, who's not nearly as mobile as he used to be. An offensive line is also mediocre as well. So I think the Texans will give them fits. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers are in a tough spot here. And I think Nico Collins is going to feast against that secondary that I also think isn't great for Pittsburgh. So give me Nico Collins as the big winner in this matchup here. Potentially it's going to carry the Texans into round 2. When we come back, we're going to take a look at the 3 things that we're looking for in the rest of this Super Wildcard weekend that, my goodness, started off with a bang yesterday. We'll be right back after this.
It's going to open up Pandora's box, but I will say this. I do believe players that sign now, like Najee, should not be eligible now, but should have to sit out and come back in next year. It's just a slippery slope. And I agree with people like Tom Izzo. I don't like it at all.
College basketball today. Only on SportsGrid.
OK Dubs has to go back to his roots. I'm not a Jets fan, I'm not a Giants fan, and neither one of those teams even play in New York. But I'm a New Yorker through and through, despite where my mail gets sent. And I will not stand for the Jets to be dragged through the mud in this way. Not gonna happen. So Dante Moore, if you do leave, you should be so lucky to fly the plane.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
Maybe the fact was that the kicker just blew a 44-yard field goal. Now, by the way, I feel horrible for this kid, Tyler Loop, who made every single field goal this season 44 yards or less. But the extra point that was missed just before that by Chris Boswell was the only extra point that he missed all season long. So did they bless that same holy water when Boswell missed the extra point? Come on, guys. Let's get it.
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
The Steelers get their touchdown, and they miss the extra point. It was Lamar Jackson who made the plays to get the Ravens into what should have been easy field goal territory. So explain to me how in the world we can look at last night's game as, well, there you go, can't trust Lamar Jackson.
The Craig Carden Show. Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports today. Matt Striker, Joe Pisapia, Sam Y, the sports guy behind the glass, along with an absolutely incredible crew. And then there's all of you. You're pretty good too. At SportsGrid, at SportsGrid TV, those are the social media handles. We want to hear from you, and we know you've got things you want to say to us. Joseph, there's still plenty of football to be played today. Give me a few things that to which you're looking forward, and basically for the entire week until we return.
Well, I want to start with the fact that we've already had a fair amount of coaching firings, right? A lot of vacancies. And I wonder if we could have 1 to 2 more. And I think that bears the question of, is Sean McDermott on the hot seat if they lose? And I think the answer should be yes, because the Buffalo Bills had a clear path this year. The Buffalo Bills were not supposed to, let the Patriots win this division, and they did. The Buffalo Bills, in a year, if I told you going back in August that the Bills would be in the playoffs, and they wouldn't have to contend with the Ravens, and they wouldn't have to contend with the Chiefs, that in the first round they'd be playing and they would be an underdog. My, how the mighty have fallen, I feel like, in Buffalo. So the general manager's to blame too, because the GM certainly didn't give enough talent around. Joshua Palmer wasn't the answer. Keon Coleman getting benched, obviously, a couple times at the end of the year, not the answer. They just doesn't have enough help. Stephon Diggs left this team a couple years ago now, and they still haven't replaced him. I don't know what they're thinking about. No matter how good of a quarterback you are, you need some help. You need some playmakers down the field, and the Bills just don't have any. James Cook's had terrific seasons. The Bills' defense has been up and down all year. They've had some good moments, some bad moments, some injuries. But I really think that if the Bills lose this game here against Jacksonville, it's going to be a tough sell to bring McDermott back. Now, we'll see. That would also be a phenomenal job that everybody would want to go to, because you'd have Josh Allen at quarterback, plus new stadium, all these fun things, great fan base. The other one is what happens in that Steelers game. At a certain point, you got to win another playoff game if you're Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin's had an incredible 19-year run with the Pittsburgh Steelers. But if they lose this game in epic fashion, if the Houston Texans come in and just dominate them and blow their doors off, it's just another season where you won enough games to make in the playoffs, and then you lose in the first round. And you're no longer Mike Tomlin the last 10 years or so. Because it's 2016, you haven't won a playoff game. You're more like Marvin Lewis, who used to go to the playoffs every year and lose every single year, right?
Yep.
That's what happened with the Bengals, right? So at a certain point, just like the Ravens said, maybe it's just a time for a change, Maybe Pittsburgh's time for a change. I know he made the playoffs. I get it. But it was one field goal away from not making the playoffs. It was one moment there where the Ravens, again, exactly what I said last week, right? The Pittsburgh Steelers will find a way to win a game they shouldn't, and the Ravens will find a way to lose a game they shouldn't. That's exactly what happened, right? Maybe after 2 decades, the voices get cold. It's time for a change, and everybody can benefit. So keep an eye on those 2 situations this weekend. Matt, am I being hyperbolic? I know these are, 2 very accomplished football coaches, especially Tomlin. But at a certain point, don't results matter?
It depends on where your bar is. I mean, overall, as a society, we've lowered our bar. But I hear what you're saying. After a while, we get it. You're good. But good is the enemy of great, and we want to be great. You do make some very valid points, which brings me to the final issue of 3 and Out here is so many of these first-time playoff quarterbacks. I'm talking about how teams like Buffalo and Philadelphia, they have this we've been there before kind of attitude. What happens to these first-time playoff quarterbacks? Because a lot of the game is from the neck up, that first hit, that, oh my God, I'm playing in the playoffs. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, look, I think that a lot of things are going to happen here. You have a lot of quarterbacks who are new to the playoffs playing. You saw Caleb Williams last night. You saw Bryce Young yesterday as well. So there's a lot of new. Cool, right? So it's no Ravens, no Chiefs. It's a very different scenario. We also got these teams that are traveling from the West Coast to the East Coast. You've got the 49ers and the Chargers going from California, both of which are going to play over on the East Coast. Travel's tough. It is tough to go, especially for those teams that play in good weather, to go then in not so great conditions or chilly conditions. It does impact these teams a little bit. They're just not used to it as frequently in terms of what the game play is going to be like. And those first-time quarterbacks, I think, are going to make a big impact here. So far, we're 1-1, right? Bryce Young got a loss. Caleb Williams got a W. We have Drake May making his playoff debut tonight. That's going to be very exciting. And look, it's funny because we overlooked the Houston Texans, but CJ Stroud has been in the league 3 years and has made the playoffs 3 years. So let's give CJ Stroud a little bit more credit. So it's going to be a great weekend of football. Stay with us on SportsGrid to get you prepared for it with Pro Football Today. And of course, stick with us for In-Game Live. That'll do it for us. But the story of the game goes on. From Matt Striker, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids. Enjoy your Sunday.
Who are we looking at? We're looking at SGA because of his availability and consistency. It's Jalen Brunson doing his usage and his leadership. It's Jaylen Brown for how they're playing. It's Cade Cunningham because Detroit's in the top of the East. The MVP talk is going to be wild, and it'll be interesting to watch. MVPs just don't dominate. They survive the season.
Pro Basketball Today, only on SportsGrid.
The Steelers get their touchdown, and they miss the extra point. It was Lamar Jackson who made the plays to get the Ravens into what should have been easy field goal territory. So explain to me how in the world we can look at last night's game as, well, there you go, can't trust Lamar Jackson.
The Craig Carden Show, only on SportsGrid.
Maybe the fact was that the kicker just blew a 44-yard field goal. Now, by the way, I feel horrible for this kid, Tyler Loop, who made every single field goal this season 44 yards or less. But the extra point that was missed just before that by Chris Boswell was the only extra point that he missed all season long. So did they bless that same holy water when Boswell missed the extra point? Come on, guys. Let's get it.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.